Would you take the peace process? Would you give them 5 million pesos? Would you give them 10 million pesos? Would you allow them to be educated in an institute? Or would you have still taken the same route that you took? Which is...
Well, I asked that same question to Mike Mastura, whose wife is my cousin.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yes. So I said to Mike, ano bang pinag-awayan natin dito?
Yes.
What do you really want? And he said, you will, I don't know if you can still recall this, but this is what he told me at that time, that they would have wanted that the old sultanate system would have been preserved.
Okay.
That they would have wanted that what the Malaysians have done with their 9 sultans would have been preserved. Because that is, in a way, the sultans that you have in Malaysia are the centers of the political life. Like what happened to the Sultanate of Hulu. It's no longer clear who really inherited the title and who is going to be the real sultan. But maybe the center of the political life would have been preserved, and maybe that would have brought peace. But you know, when the Americans came in and brought in their sense of democracy, which was different,
they changed this.
They destroyed the sultanate system. So, but that's why I told him, what can we do? It's now being, it has been destroyed for several years. And you cannot impose a system of elections when the people have been used to that kind of system. And maybe the sultan should be a figurehead there. Yes. But not just a figurehead, because, you know, in Malaysia, the sultan is well respected.
Yes, he's the head of state.
Yeah, and yet there is a democratic system, the parliamentary system,
which is the head of government, which
is the
runs
Prime Minister. Yes, which runs the administrative side of administering the country.
You know, I agree with that position. If there must be a way for us to be able to somehow include them into our culture, into our history, and recognize the important the important role that the Sultanate played. There must be a way to include him into the ARMM, or make him part of a national office somehow under the office of the president. Because it's just a question of looking for a solution. Anyway, we're going to talk about Camp Raja Muda when Republika returns. Okay, we're back in Republika. We're talking to Lieutenant General Raul Urgello. How did it come about that you, as a military man, working within the context of, I think during FVR's administration?
Yes.
Was that correct? That allowed, if I might say so, that allowed all these other camps to exist. How did it come about that you were allowed to, I use the word allowed carefully, under FVR, to have been able to master all this operation against Camp Raja Muda? How did this all start?
Well, that was really the guidance that, in a way, there was a ceasefire.
There was a ceasefire.
But
so what instructions would you give the ordinary soldier if there was a ceasefire?
We have to observe the ceasefire. But in case they will shoot at us, we have to return fire. That is logical.
Okay. Or if they're armed?
Yes, if they are armed.
If they're armed, your orders is to shoot them?
Yes.
It makes sense.
But there was a ceasefire, which we observed. And that is the first announcement I said that we will observe the ceasefire when I took over as division commander of the 6th Infantry Division.
Okay. This is what area, 6th Infantry Division?
Well, generally Maguindanao, North Cotabato, Sultan, going all the way to Davao. That was the... In a way, I commanded around, at the height of the trouble there, I commanded around 18 battalions with 5 brigades.
So you observed the ceasefire, but your instruction to the soldier is, pag may baril sila, pwedeng barilin.
Well, that was really...
that made sense to me.
That is the gray area.
I think that makes sense to me because...
That's a gray area.
Okay.
But you have to, definitely, you have to defend yourself.
Okay, but did you move your troops around? I mean, at that time, wala pang ATS siguro. Area of temporary stay. So
there was.
Meron ng ATS
There was a 5-kilometer radius around the so-called Malmar. You know, the dam site it was called Malmar Dam was being constructed.
This is in
And
what area specifically?
that was
Just for,
between Carmen, the town of Carmen, Pagalungan, and Pikit.
okay, so you had to observe that 5-kilometer radius?
Yes, we had observed that, but there was a trouble there because they allowed the PNP to guard that place, but they killed 2 of the policemen. So I was asked by the Philippine National Police to...
You were tasked?
I was requested
Uh-huh.
to help them protect themselves.
So what did you do?
Well, the force there, the so-called the MNLF called their camp there across the Maridagao River, Campo Uno.
Okay.
So we have to brought in a lot of forces, and I was very lucky because the so-called Simba vehicles were just manufactured.
Okay, still brand
And it
new.
was the dry season.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, that happened during Holy Week. So it was able to take on the weight of the armored vehicle.
Okay.
And we were able to clear that area with almost a 1 week fighting.
Why was there fighting when was it because of the police? You had to run after the people who killed the 2 policemen. What was the
That's another story. This was a later development when the late Captain Lucero was killed with 3 others.
Okay.
So we had to recover his body.
So the body was inside the camp?
Across the river, and we have to recover that. And we
In Campo Uno?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the confluence of the Maridagao and the Malitubog rivers.
Okay. So you had a troop movement, you had an operation conducted to retrieve the bodies?
Yes.
What ensued in the process of the...
Well, when we crossed the Maridagao River, it was quite difficult because the river was...
Because they would not give you the bodies back?
We didn't ask them to give them. We wanted to retrieve the body.
Okay.
We were able to do that, with the fighting broke out in around 5:30 in the morning. I was able to recover the bodies of these unfortunate victims at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we could barely move forward because the battalion I sent there could barely move an inch. So I have to move around to Midsayap, maneuver, and then we brought him 2 battalions with a dozen armored vehicles. And we were able to clear the place.
How heavy was the fighting?
Well, the fighting was 2 to 3 days.
And the enemy numbered?
We cannot determine exactly, but they were able to escape by they cut these banana trunks and floated down the river down to this maybe 15 kilometers floating down the Maridagao River.
This is MNLF. These are MNLF.
These were MILF.
MI?
MI, yes.
MI already?
That was already MI.
Okay. And you had no idea what was the strength of the enemy at that point?
This was held by them for quite a number of maybe more than a year or 2. And they thought we cannot enter the place. That's the same thing. Downstream was the Rajamuda, if you're talking of Rajamuda.
Okay, did you try to ask permission from civilian authorities or from the president? What was required of a general to be able to undertake this kind of operation?
I consulted my lawyer.
Okay, you did not talk to the president?
I showed my lawyer what kind of agreement is this.
Okay.
And he said, that cannot be a valid agreement.
Okay.
And he said, is this a valid treaty?
Okay.
Well, there's no signature by the Senate, so that cannot be a treaty between the armed forces and the MILF at that time.
Okay.
So,
how about the ceasefire? That was
the ceasefire was not very clear because there was really no written agreement. It was an unwritten ceasefire.
So on that basis, you just moved.
There was no. We had no choice because there were already people who were killed, and we have to recover their bodies.
Did the president try to stop you? Did the Malacanang try to stop you? Did the palace try to call you up and say, you stop that operation?
No, they did not stop because it was already ongoing. And the main coordinator was the assistant president for Mindanao, Paul Dominguez. So I was always in contact with Paul Dominguez.
And it was okay? He okayed the entire operation?
Well, I explained it to him. I explained the situation that we have to go there and to clear the area in the first place.
But this was not covered by the 5-kilometer radius.
That was the center of the 5-kilometer radius.
Okay. Okay. So what happened? You moved your troops there. Eventually, they all left. In short, what you're saying is they surrendered the place.
They have to run away.
They ran away.
They ran away. Well, we could not get. There were only a few bodies that were recovered, but mostly they left the place.
Okay. What you're saying here is because natalo sila, or they were scared to meet the entire force of the armed forces.
Well, when I was not yet there was an operation
Okay.
that was conducted in the same place,
Okay.
and we lost so many people.
Uh-huh.
They have to recover 14 bodies,
Uh-huh.
negotiating with the mayor of Pikit at that time, Mayor Mutin Malingko,
Uh-huh.
because from the highway, you follow the road, there's around 14 kilometers inside, and that's quite a long stretch to move people.
When you were able to get Camp Raja Muda, did the president say, "Well done"? Did he give you a medal? What kind of recognition did the president give you? Or just words?
Well, there were really no, there were fighting, but there were no bodies recovered.
Okay. But they gave up the camp.
I was actually investigated by Dilanggalin, Congressman
Dilanggalin, yes.
Yeah, that led to an investigation why I entered that Raja Muda.
And what happened?
Well, there were several Muslims who sided with me.
Uh-huh.
Like the Muslims in the near place, the downstreams,
Okay.
the Mangansakan family.
The Filipino Muslims, yes.
Yeah, Mangansakan family, who were my friends ever since. And they said that was a justified thing to do. And this was a big number of Muslims. They occupied almost one half because the investigation was conducted in the gymnasium in Pikit. And they said that was the correct thing for me to do because...
in short, the MILF was violating the ceasefire itself.
Yes.
That's what, would that be correct?
The only trouble there was they said that the ceasefire could not, or the peace process cannot go on if we continue occupying Raja Muda, because that was the birthplace and the home barrio of Hasim Salamat.
So what is now the status of Camp Raja Muda? Is it now under MILF again?
Well, we were told to vacate that place at that time to be replaced by the Philippine National Police, and later on they had to operate again to recover Raja Muda because this was the source of political, criminalities. So many criminals conducted hold up along the highway, and they sought sanctuary in this place where you have a so-called peace area.
What advice, what lessons have we learned based upon your experience, the wealth of experience you've gathered all your life, and then now we're faced with the MILF again? I mean, what should we learn from your experience that you think this can be a template for the present approach?
I think you cannot have a template in any situation because you have the guys on the ground has to be able to think and consider the other factors because the conditions are not always the same.
The same.
Yes.
But can we pick up anything from what you did in Raja Muda that can be applicable to present conditions? Especially dealing with the MILF or the so-called ATS that they have now, the areas that they occupy temporarily, so to speak. Because I heard, was it the AFP who said, technically they don't exist anymore. I do not know what technically means, but what lessons can we learn from you?
Well, when we moved into Raja Muda, it started out with the kidnapping of 42 workers under the Chinese survey team. They were conducting seismic survey, and these were kidnapped by the MILF.
Okay.
So we had to go after the kidnappers. That was the complaint of then Congressman Dilanggalin.
Okay.
Because he said that I brought in too much force and too much weapons.
But if the president was going to ask you, if the palace was going to ask you, what can we learn from you? What do you think we should adopt when it comes to our dealings now with the MILF in the current peace process?
Well, I have seen all of these, so many things that had happened, like the burning of the town of Ipil in Zamboanga,
Yes.
the things that had happened in Cotabato. Anyway, for me, I always look at the things where you can develop an advantage.
Okay.
Like, for example, when they put up these camps,
Uh-huh.
there was Abu Bakar.
Yes, correct, correct.
Uh,
You would not allow it.
no, I will allow that because that is what been approved by the people on top.
Okay.
But it is wrong for a guerrilla force kung sa negosyo pa ito.
Oo.
You do not invest in real estate.
Aha.
A guerrilla force is supposed to be a hit and run. When
Correct.
you start investing, then you are now fixing your situation.
Aha.
So with that, you can. I took advantage of that situation. I did not get Abu Bakar. It was my successor.
Okay.
But you can just imagine the casualties of the MILF in the periphery of Camp Abu Bakar.
Aha.
Because we had Abu Bakar actually surrounded from Buldon up to the others, up to the sea.
So what you're saying is they should not be allowed to have a camp. I mean, if you could sway, influence civilian mandates, you would say they should not be allowed to have a camp. They should not even be in fact armed.
There are really things that we will, the decision makers on top
I understand,
it's mostly, there are political considerations to be made.
Do you agree that the AFP should be allowed to enter in any area of the Philippines for that matter?
When I was in Negros, that's the same thing that happened.
Okay.
So they have a zone of peace.
Okay.
And I was asked whether I would agree with the zone of peace.
But is it practical to have a zone of peace? Because actually in the exercise, that's when the trouble begins.
That's where they found out that the NPA is what was to their disadvantage.
Uh-huh.
I did never enter the zone of peace.
Uh-huh.
But when they get out the zone of peace, that is where they will meet me.
Uh-huh.
So I never violated the agreement.
Uh-huh.
Because in that zone of peace, the NPAs were allowed to go in and out.
What would your advice be if you're going to run after Asnawi, Commander Robot, and the other one? With the last 1 minute.
I really cannot give advices on that because, the
Okay.
forces available, the terrain, and all of these factors. You have to, anyway, it has to be at your fingertips.
Uh-huh.
Because, in Maguindanao, where I have almost all the places there I have been into,
Uh-huh.
we already know where they will be hiding,
Okay.
who are the relatives here, where we were in place, the guns.
But if you were given the order, you would run after these people, irregardless of where they would be hiding, in short. Following the experience that you did, you do that.
As I said, there was a ceasefire.
Okay.
And every time that the president at that time went abroad,
That's when you moved.
that's when I received a call. You see to it that there's no operation being conducted because
Okay.
the president is abroad. But what happened? I said, naambus kami.
Okay. Well, wala na po tayong panahon. Sayang at time is indeed very short. We'd like to thank Lieutenant General Raul Urgello. Thank you very much. Daghang salamat. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Maraming salamat po. Sana may natutuhan po tayo dito para po sa darating na mga buwan at mga taon dahil hindi po natatapos ang usaping ito. This has been Erik Espina. Palagi po nagsasabi sa inyo, magmasid, makialam, higit sa lahat po ay manindigan sapagkat wala pong magmamahal sa Pilipino kung hindi ang Pilipino. Daghang salamat, maayong gabi kaninyong tanan.
Yes. The provision of the funds for the actual credit, there is also a government policy that the department itself is not supposed to engage in extending credit. I am aware, Your Honor, that there can be provision made for the credit available through various conduits